the idea of a nationalist populist party arising in Germany makes even me a little nervous. So can you talk about that party a little bit? Actually, I have seen one of them on the War Room on Steve Bannon's show, but that's about all I know. I don't really know what they're about and how they've been tolerated. I mean, Germany is so locked down by, pro-American NATO, the consensus, right? I mean, how has that gone on? I haven't followed that story.
Well, it's really no different. I mean, it's no different from any other European country that's an immigration destination country in the sense that um, immigration is by far the main issue. I mean, without that issue, there'd be no significant support. I mean, AfD existed prior to the migrant crisis as a kind of Eurosceptic libertarian type party, a bit like UKIP prior to Farage, roughly. So it was one of these parties that was essentially an economic libertarian type of party. And then
Really?
the migrant crisis happens. The mainstream German parties aren't really dealing with this issue. And so the party, essentially a wing of the party that's concerned about immigration, takes over. Frauke Petry comes in and makes this her signature issue. And then the support for the AfD just starts rising, shooting up, right? So it sort of just captured all this energy around this migrant crisis, and there's a million people showing up, and all of that, went into the AfD. And so that's really its origin. Now, of course, you've got the sensitivities and anxieties over the Nazi past, absolutely. And this was one of the reasons people thought, oh, well, this could never happen in Germany. But no countries are really, except for Ireland now, and no major countries in the Western Europe are exceptions that I can think of. I mean, Wallonia in Belgium maybe is kind of an exception, but so.
Okay, the exception that proves the rule. That's interesting. So, and with the AfD, you're saying that economic misfortune is not the cause of the rise of that. You just stated pretty clearly it was a direct response to the migration crisis, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a paper that showed how monthly refugee arrivals correlates with polling increases in the AfD. I mean, it's
wow,
very clear. It's not. I mean, it's not any mystery, and I think you'd be pretty hard pressed not to say, well, why is it the case this party's fortunes suddenly take off during the migrant crisis? I mean, you'd have to be pretty stubborn to, I think, resist that explanation. I mean, of course, you can always, people will always say, people who want to back up the economic argument will always use a sort of geographic type of analysis where the sort of more poor economic regions, it's a bit like in the US too. They'll say, hey, look, the Trump vote's higher in these depressed economic regions, or the Front National vote is higher in these regions. But of course, what they're not doing is really looking at the individual level, which, those regions have very few, fewer young people, fewer ethnic minorities, fewer people with degrees, which largely explains why they are essentially voting as they are. But the independent effect of being depressed is quite small from what I can tell. And certainly as an individual who your income level, whether you're employed or not, whether you've lost your job, none of that really makes much difference to whether you're likely to vote for these parties. So yeah, I think now of course there is something to, again, I think it's cultural, the East German versus West German. I mean, East Germany, Eastern Europe has, it's a less liberal place. The education system was not the same. The public culture was not the same. So you do have an East German effect. But that's not, in my view, an economic effect. It's much more a kind of Iron Curtain cultural effect.
Okay.